Kristen's second question was practical advice on what I can do to prepare to lead a new team.
Like some just, those all the things we just talked about are great and they'll come to fruition as I start. But maybe there's a few practical, like, this is an action item. Go do this. This is an action item. That sort of a.
Oh, okay. So you want actions.
Yeah,
great,
not
great
just
prompt.
like an.
Not just theory.
Yeah.
Buy lunch. Or you like these coffee things? Buy donuts.
Yeah.
Food is an incredible bribe. It's all out of proportion to its value. Do some buying. That's thing one. Very concrete. Whether it's donuts or bagels or whatever. Whatever the team likes. That's thing one. Thing two, listen first. Go be super humble and be honestly humble and say, I don't know what you do. I don't know what's important to you. I'd like to give you half an hour. Come into my office next week and tell me what's important to you. Tell me what I need to know. I need to learn. Ask questions and let people talk. Number one, you'll learn a lot. Number two, people love to talk. And so being listened to earns trust like nothing else. Do you know reflective listening?
I don't.
Okay.
Doesn't ring a bell, but.
Reflective listening is where you restate back to the person what they say. Like, so I heard you say you would like some concrete tips on how to start. Did I understand you? And
I do that a lot.
Fantastic.
I reiterate things too much, maybe. I'm a little repetitive, but I like to make sure I'm understanding what the ask really is. So I tend to reiterate it in different words to make sure that I'm getting the right context.
So perfect. Do a lot of that. Do a lot of. Those are my like practical advice on how to start. It's humility. Listen first. Mm-hmm. Common advice is in the first 30 days, don't make any decisions. I'm not sure, like, that may not be practical, but common advice is definitely solicit more than you decide first. And then your third thing was foundational pieces to set a team up to succeed, especially in regards to teams that have gone without a manager, effective manager, for months. Zelkova 204, of course you missed stuff. You're late. Sorry. You'll have to watch and rewatch the YouTube video. But there's still plenty for you to catch right now. So, on those foundations, though, the foundational things, for me, I think it's clarity and goals. If a team has three things, they will then succeed without you. They need clarity on where they're going, a vision and goals. They need the right people, so the right skills and the right people. And they need the resources. And if you have a team that's bought into a set of goals or a vision, has the right people to do it, and the tools, they will usually do it. Like, most people don't come to work expecting to screw off. There are exceptions, but most people come to work, all other things being equal, wanting to do a decent job. Mm-hmm. If you give them the goals and the tools, they'll do it. So I think what you're going to find out is that since they haven't had a manager, because Kristen, for anybody who's joined the stream recently, if Kristen's taking over a team that hasn't really had a manager for a while, they probably are missing things. They haven't had an advocate. They haven't had someone to be a servant. They haven't had someone to unblock them.
Yeah. Or to require, like, certain structure. So
right.
That's
to define process. Yeah, go on.
And it's kind of caused a little conflict, I feel, amongst the team members because they each view the right structure and process a little bit differently than each other.
Right.
And what's happened is without having someone to be that kind of facilitator of the conversation to then make a decision on this is how we operate as a team, and if we need to reassess this, we will. But there hasn't been that point person, and so it's kind of been no one wants to step on each other's toes, but no one agrees with each other on how to do things. So that's going to be something has to be handled.
Time to go Jocko Willink on them, Do you know Jocko? He's the author of Extreme Ownership.
Oh, this is the one where you were saying like he sounded like he was gonna just be this like huge buff ripped guy and
Yeah.
I think I remember hearing.
Well, Jocko Willink. What I've said about him is I can't. He's an ex-SEAL, and he's a retired SEAL, whatever you want to call it. And I can't imagine anyone more like what better name could you give a SEAL than Jocko? Like, I don't know, chat, if you have a better name for a kick-ass military veteran than Jocko, maybe you go like all John Wayne with the Duke, but Jocko is just, I have trouble elevating above being named Jocko and having been like a SEAL officer in Iraq. It's really tough for me to imagine where you upgrade from that. But Jocko's the extreme ownership is all about the lesson that this does refer to for you. A good manager sees every problem on the team as theirs. If they don't have the resources, it's because you didn't get them. Mm-hmm. If they don't have the structure, it's because you didn't lead them to understand what the structure should be. Right. If there's a poor performer, it's because you didn't hold the right standards. Now, you're brand new, but you don't use that as an excuse. You say, okay, it's true. We have these problems. I wasn't here, but now I own them. So with your help as a team, we will overcome them. But I'm responsible.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Finger pointing is not ever a very inspiring trait in the manager. I have someone who's a fan of the stream. I don't know if she's here tonight. She does all our YouTube work. And she has a manager who's just... totally the opposite. She asked the manager for some help with something, and the manager just totally was like, well, I can't help you with that. What do you think you should do about it? And like, woo, like this total like disempowering, like, wow, I'll bother to come help you. By the way, I will say, Banhammer, Hugh Jackman is not a bad call to go with Jocko Willink. Like, you can imagine a SEAL named Hugh Jackman. And Jack Hugeman is even funnier. So, those are pretty good. Like, that's why I challenge chat. They're very smart. We have a very smart chat. Yeah.
This is fun getting to read chat. I never get to read chat because I don't have it open.
You don't have a big monitor in front of you?
No, I usually have my laptop on a box, and I don't want to...
You don't want to mess with it?
Yeah.
So, anyway, clear goals. And so I think a team needs clear goals. You need to learn what the goals can be, but you give them a way to succeed. You give them a path to feel successful. Mm-hmm. And by the way, chat, you're killing it. This is the most votes on questions I've seen in a long time. And so we're going to take some questions now because I've worked through Kristen's, and we'll come back to anything you'd like to do for follow-up. And I'll let you weigh in on these too. This will be fun. So the first question, Pink Dragons, can you put it up for us? For TC, is there any point in going to management instead of job hopping every 2 years? So I assume what this means is for total comp. Is there any, I don't know, but if whoever wrote this wants to clarify in chat, what is TC? Is it total comp? Is it something else? I'll wait a second and see what you say. Because the other thing TC means to me is TwitchCon, and that makes no sense in this context. So for TwitchCon, I can't read it. But
all I could think of is like TLC, like
TLC?
Tender Loving Care. There's totally not.
No, Furrowkey's here. He says, and Furrowkey is holding the Bits badge, so someone needs to challenge him for that, just for fun. No, Furrowkey, I want you to keep it totally. So TC is total comp. For total comp, is there any point going into management instead of job hopping every 2 years? Well, sure. Job hopping has a lot of costs. Number one, job hopping can mess up your resume, although 2 years you can get away with. Number two, though, what if you actually like your job? What if you actually like your job? And specifically, what if you like your boss? So job hopping is randomizing who your next manager will be. So yes, if you don't care who you work for or what you do, you probably can earn the very most as a mercenary. But what if you actually like what you do? Second, in the end, the very most compensated people on earth are almost all managers. So, as an example, richest man on earth, my ultimate boss, Jeff Bezos, is a manager. Bill Gates, manager. Elon Musk, manager. On and on. In the end, if what you really care about is being like buy an island rich, you probably are going to need to be in some kind of leadership. There might be exceptions. That said, I want to be really clear, and I'm going to do this stream on Wednesday about how to advance your career as an individual contributor. Mm-hmm. Unless you want to be mega wealthy, you don't have to do that. But this question seems to be about chasing the money. There's a lot of money in leadership. I wouldn't say go into leadership for money, though. That's a bad motive. But leadership gets paid well. Are you going into leadership for money?
I mean, money's nice, but
Will you be getting a raise?
I actually don't even know what the offer is going to be yet. I just want to do it, right? That's the direction I want to go.
Okay.
I'm hoping that, there's going to be a raise of some sort. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we should talk negotiation.
I know. I've asked for more money before. I know you've said before, like...
Most people don't, and women definitely don't.
Yeah, and one time I did get shut down because, like, literally, it was a small company. They just didn't have any more to give.
Wow, that's the story anyway.
Yeah, and so it is a very...
But you've asked another time?
Difficult.
Did you ask and get more another time?
I did, yeah.
So you ask and
but
got.
Every time, it's, like, so much anxiety going into that. But I'm not in it for the money, no. I want to make good money, but it's more about me feeling fulfilled in what I'm doing. So... if I'm not getting fulfillment and, honing in on a specific hard skill, for instance, then, like, what I do get fulfillment from is helping other people do that.
Okay.
That's why I'm there.
So, Furrow Key, if this was your question, I want to answer just a little bit more on it. What I will say is, look, money's awesome. And almost no one ever turned down more money. And it turns out, in fact, that if you ask almost anyone on earth how much money would be enough, they say 20,000 more than whatever they're making. Like, that's their mental number for what would be great. But you'll have more fun in life doing something you really love. So, God, please don't become a manager and inflict your disinterested self on people who are going to suffer because all you wanted was a bigger paycheck. Be better at what you do and you get paid as that. If you don't want to be a manager, don't do it. Plus, David has the best answer. All right, so there's a vote for some companies have good parallel tracks for management, and I see they're not too different in comp until way up the ladder. That is true. Amazon is like that. Chasing total comp is a very vain grind, yes. But sometimes there's more reason than just the worldly pursuits. Every career question user chases total comp until... Yeah, so I agree with this. Total comp... So both of these last two chat comments are true. Total comp doesn't make you happy. I agree with that. But love doesn't pay the bills. That's also true. We had Jill here the last time we did a show here, and she said that Washington Trails Association doesn't run on wishes and rainbows. And that's true. It takes money to pay the bills. But it turns out there's so much evidence that more money won't make you long-term happy. And Shadow Fox says she's terrified in negotiations. And Shadow's looking at a new job. So, Shadow, we'll have to talk about that offline to prep you for it. Because negotiation... Yes, none of us love it. It's very scary. Maybe I should do a show on how to negotiate a job offer.
Well, part of the difficult thing for me, too, when it comes to negotiation, especially in this situation, is that I've never held an official management role before. So how do I gauge my value from my potential and my heart, like what skills I do have and my ability that I don't maybe quite understand? How good am I at doing? How good of a manager can I be? Like, I haven't done that role yet. And so going in there, it's like, well, you don't want to be fully yourself and thinking like, I'm going to have
Absolutely.
some hard lessons to learn. And
Absolutely.
so
I'm glad you believe
there's
that.
a balance, and I think it's hard to know without being in it to an extent to know where that line is. Like, how do you gauge your value? And I tend to always underestimate my value when it comes to this thing, just because I never want to seem like egotistical or
Yep.
full of myself. And so, but then I get pissed off at myself if I don't push for things, because I'm like, I know I can do this well. Like, I should just put it out there. And it's
So
a huge challenge to
you
figure
need to
out.
hold a dichotomy in your head, two different things, cognitive dissonance. I love the humility of believing you have a lot to learn and that you're going to have some hard lessons, because that's true. If we talk 5 years from now, we can have a big list of everything you screwed up as a manager, and you can just regale us all with your lessons, because it will happen. At the same time, ladies in particular tend to under-ask and undervalue. And so I would try to set aside some of that. Be humble about the role. Be audacious about your value. And that's a tricky thing to do, but push a little bit and ask your CTO boss, I want to make sure I'm being compensated appropriately. And there is a little bit of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Almost any offer you get, I'd recommend frowning at.
It's so hard to do. Like, you never want to.
So let me tell you an interesting story. Tell Chad an interesting story. I joined Amazon. I had no idea. I had this same problem 15 years ago. I joined, and I had no idea. I asked for like a little bit more than what I was making in the startup I was in. And it turns out they were paying me below the bottom of my comp range. There was a comp range, and my offer was here. And I did this job for a couple years, and I had no idea. Then I got promoted, and they had to move me to the bottom of the next comp range. I was still stupid. Because I was below the comp range for my job, the move to the bottom of my next comp range was enormous. It was like, oh my God. What I didn't realize, again, stupid, was they moved me to the exact bottom. Because, of course, it was a huge raise. But then I started at the bottom of that range. So
But then when you're looking at this, it's like your capabilities and your skills versus your years of experience. And so figuring out how the valuation, like that, sometimes more experience does equate more value. And sometimes maybe it doesn't. And it's really hard for me to determine how much that weighs. Like, how much does years of experience as a manager weigh into this factor of how effective and valuable of a manager I think I can be. And then maybe I just need to, so the voice in my head is saying, you just need to like get in, see how it goes, and then approach that.
Yeah,
Because
and that's everyone has that fear. Like, I'm going to prove a little more, I'm going to prove a little more. And I guess what I would say is, as long as you're not obnoxious about it, asking never hurt anyone. Salary.com, try and get a picture in your role, in your location, get information.
I've looked at that.
But don't be afraid to ask for more towards like a third of the way into your range, even brand new. Here's something everyone needs to know in chat, because we have a really active chat with great questions tonight, and thank you. I love Pashi and Chalupa and all of you people weighing in. Feel free to keep it coming. What I want to say to chat to learn here, and also to Kristen, is salary is arbitrary. We all want to believe it's this cosmically fair system where you get paid what you're worth and where it's based on years of experience. It's really based on speaking as a manager, and I currently manage, I don't know, let me think about it, like 180 people, 170 people, and I have managed 800. I'm looking at my team, and if someone asks for a raise, I do a simple calculus, not are they worth it? Can I afford to lose this person? And can I, within the rules, pay them that? And And I'm not looking at all 170 other people and thinking, is this fair? And there is some of that in a big company like Amazon. I don't get to make the decision just by myself. There's policy and there's HR, and we do try to be somewhat fair. But it's really about who do we need to keep and why. And so the point is, wait till they decide they want you and they make the offer, and then realize at that point they're mentally committed. They've made the offer. They've kind of told the other people no. So
we'll see how it goes.
well, again, if you haven't read that book, because I know we've talked about it on stream when you're around, Rejection Proof.
Yeah. I haven't read that one yet.
Well,
because
that's a
I
quick
don't want to
read.
read it because I know that I'm not going to be good at that. I'm not. I don't do well with rejection. I struggle with it.
Then you need to read the book. It's a book about how to fix that.
Yeah,
Come
it's
on.
on the back burner there. You know, I've got a few others I've got to get through.
You know, I get feedback, I'm going to say, from the community that I don't push you hard enough, that I'm, like, nice to you, and that I should be more my real self. I'm just saying,
Okay,
like...
all right. But I have read, like, 5 books.
You're good at reading books. I agree with that. But, like, I'm just saying you're avoiding it. Like, you're, like, hiding...
yeah, but I'm being honest about it.
Yeah, all right.
It's a step in the right
All right. What book can fix the fear of rejection? Hey, we pulled somebody new out who's never chatted before. Jeepicus. I love that name. The book is called Rejection Proof by Jia Jiang. Lee Hephaestus has another good book if you prefer, Never Split the Difference. It's about negotiations. It's another, I have not read it. It's on my list, Hephaestus, so that's another good recommendation. But the Jia Jiang book, Rejection Proof, is great. All right, we're going to take another question. Hit us up. Any advice for strengthening connections with a fully remote team? Nobody in the same office. So I actually, if you look at my calendar, I think I have a talk on remote work. I'm not sure when, but in the next month or two. So I'll answer this briefly now. But advice for strengthening connections with a fully remote team. Really hard. Number one, if you can travel, go there in person. But this is nobody in the same office. So number two, if you can, and I realize not every company has the economics to do this, bring everyone together. Nothing beats real human contact. But number two, if you can't do that, then, and we may be getting some buffering, which sorry about that if we are. Number two, though, if you can't keep everyone together, or get everyone together, then video conference. Video is better than phone. Number three, you've got to be really clear on goals and direction. What do you need to check with me about? What don't you? What do we have in common? Kristen, do you want to talk a little bit? Oh, by the way, we should say here, everyone in chat, I need your help. Chat back, Eric, take a drink. It's very important. We'll explain later. Eric, drink up.
E-R-I-K. There's a K at the end of that one.
E-R-I-K. Eric, drink up. All right. Yeah, come on in. Awesome, Dave.
So thirsty.
Refilling.
I wanted to make one note on that question because I've had to do that as a freelancer. I was a project manager for a couple years.
Talk about it.
And so it was always a challenge because I come in to these partially remote teams as a contractor and have to build relationships really quickly with an agency, multiple people in the agency and the team, and then other freelancers on the team. And I love it. They're all saying it. And so that was a challenge.
We'll explain the drink in a minute. Keep going.
So that was a challenge for me because I didn't already have buy-in from the team. And so the core agency, look at me. I'm coming in to, run this project, and they don't know me. And then we're using other people that don't know us. And so I would say, video can be great, but what helped me was starting out with Slack, honestly, just allowing people to start express their humor in a safe space. So why a lot of people might like participating in chat, but may not ever want to be in my situation right now, sitting up front here with you. It's similar. And I worked with a lot of introverts. And so providing them a way to start connecting and get to know each other with stupid gifts and, just
Yep, Slack's a great tool.
it just helped a lot for me. And then
or Discord.
Building off of that, with the phone calls and, like not always having to jump in and be straight to business. Like give like 30 seconds to say something friendly or like check in on someone,
Yeah, building with a remote team, social stuff is fantastic. People want to be known for who they are. They want to be cared about as humans. So the Eric thing.
Yeah.
Kristen's older brother is Eric.
Yeah.
He knew that she was coming, and that's who she's visiting here in Seattle. Mm-hmm. He knew that she was coming on the show tonight and meanly said they were going to make a drinking game out of stuff she does on show, but they wouldn't even tell her what it is.
Yeah, so it's probably like every time I touch my hair. Or, I mean, if you want to join in, you can make up your own rules. I'm sure I have some
That's
nervous
right.
ticks. But...
but we think we should turn it around and get Eric chug-a-lugging, and we're just going to call him out all the time, say, Eric, another drink. And there's enough witnesses, we'll find out later if he lived up to it.
Yes.
So, and she says Eric has all the drinks. So
yeah,
there's no supply problem here.
He works at a distillery here in
Oh,
Seattle.
shit.
And may have brought you guys a bottle.
All right.
But yeah, Westland, it's delicious. And he's got
all right, what
all
type?
The whiskeys. All of it.
Whiskey distillery.
It's a single malt. It's a single malt whiskey.
Single malt whiskey.
It's
all right.
Very good.
All right. Whiskey. So Eric, get on it, buddy. I haven't met you, and don't kill yourself. But otherwise, we're looking for results. We're results oriented. So I'll talk more on another stream. Now Eric's getting a lot of job requests. So any advice for strengthening connections? That was actually great. The Slack call out was great. So see, you have two experts here now. I'll go to another question in a minute because we have lots of votes. Anything else you want to know about starting your new job? We've talked about negotiation.
I mean, I'm sure there's a billion things. This is all great stuff. It's just, balancing curiosity with being able to make decisions when you need to. And I'm coming into this very honestly saying, like, I need them to teach me what they need most. Okay. And I'm okay with that, but I'm also okay with having to make a decision.
Okay.
Because sometimes that just has to be done.
Yep, sometimes.
So I'm just going to have to kind of wait and see, I guess, when those opportunities and figure out how to, balance it. But.
Okay. Well, definitely being willing to decide. Most of my career success has come from taking gambles. Like listening, but then being willing to take a bet and go. Because have you ever heard the phrase analysis paralysis?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel when I'm picking dinner, but I think I do a better job at work.
you got to get people out of that. Because some results, getting some results now matters more than perfect results later, usually. Yeah. Don't let the great be the enemy of the good sometimes. Like I'm more of a get something done and move on. So, all right. Let's see. We'll hit another question then. We have lots of good questions. How much underperformance justifies firing someone? Can I define that term? Sure, Anawax. I'll do that and then I'll go back to the question. Can you define analysis paralysis? Analysis paralysis is where people just want to keep studying stuff and never make a decision, where they have a lot of choices and they keep debating them. I've never been in the military, unlike Jocko Willink, unlike Awesome Dave here. But the military is a good teacher of sometimes just act. And basically, when the bullets start flying, thinking too much about what to do will get you killed. And charging the enemy is a good plan. Retreating from the enemy is a good plan. Falling down and getting in the lowest spot you can away from the bullets is a good plan. Thinking about it is a dead plan. And at some level in business, do something and you'll learn. If you charge the enemy and you don't get to him, or there's a wall in the way, you'll know that's a bad plan. You can do something else. We used to joke about this. Dave and I used to play role-playing games together. Maybe one day I'll start streaming RPGs again. But we used to call that plan the modified linear panic. So you run in a panic in a straight line until you hit an object, and then you bounce off and you go another direction. That actually isn't the worst business strategy. it's better than sitting still doing nothing. So,
and I would say that ways to learn that, how to handle that, can be starting super small. So, like, for instance, many years ago, working at the front desk of a CPA firm, there'd be
that's not
like,
on your resume. I've seen your resume.
I know, it's
That's
whatever.
It's
It's not
fair.
related.
No,
Okay,
that's fair.
So yes.
You just don't think I have your resume that memorized, though, and I want to.
It would be weird if you have a photographic memory. You can just. But
I do.
So at the CPA firm, like, this stupid printer would break all the time, and you just had to figure out how to fix it. Like, you could have told people, no, we just can't print, and now we're like behind, and we don't have these things ready for our, you can't file your tax. That's not an excuse. You just have to fix it, and it was something small, that I could have been like, well, I'm not really responsible for the printer, so, like, we're just gonna have to get a new printer. We have to call and wait for someone to come fix it. But, like, you could just go and you just start finagling. Like, do I know anything about this printer? No, I'm just, like, start with the on-off switch, right? The old on-off trick. But no, just little things, like, can start teaching you how to just make decisions. Like, just take action. And I think that is helpful when the risks that you're taking on get larger. And so, like, throughout all those micro decisions that I've had to make leading up to now, I'm much more confident in I take in everything I can and I make the best decision I can at that time. And no one has ever, like, reprimanded me for doing that. Like, sometimes you
that will happen.
To do it.
You've been very lucky. It will happen.
Or I've made really great decisions.
So, yeah, well, fantastic. But it will still happen someday. So I'm glad you've been that lucky. The Rex, good to see you here. There's somebody new here. Will Scarlett, better to go all in on a mediocre plan than being lazy on a good plan. Another way that's often phrased is great execution beats great strategy all of the time. And I generally think that's true. And Chalupa Whale works with me at Amazon. He says this conversation is all dive deep versus bias for action. Eventually, you do need Amazon has a leadership principle called bias for action, and eventually you have to get on with it. Somebody asked if we play D&D. Yes, Dave and I played D&D together, but then we went esoteric. We loved a funny game called Paranoia, which was all about computers taking over the world. And we also played a very esoteric game called Rollmaster. And so we are complete geeks, no question. And we own it proudly. All right, this is fun. You're good at answering these. So we never got around to saying how much underperformance justifies firing someone. So look, if someone is struggling, you never fire them right away. That's basically almost evil. You can fire someone right away for doing unethical things, for stealing, for sexual harassment. Like, those are like, please leave the building, never come back. We'll ship you the stuff in your desk. Mm-hmm. But underperformance, there's two things you have to figure out. First, underperformance comes from basically two things: lack of motivation or lack of skill and ability. If it's lack of skill and ability, you can figure out if the person can learn those things. Can they be trained? Some people can and some people can't. Not everyone can learn and be great at every skill. As an example, I struggle to draw a straight line with the aid of a ruler. I would never be a good artist, I don't believe. So if I somehow ended up in an artistic position or in a position that now required artistic work, I would be the wrong person. And at that point, you need to discuss with me how I'm going to go somewhere else where I have skills that apply. But if they can be trained, great. You train them, you educate them, you give them a chance, you give them a buddy, a mentor, you send them to a class. If they then don't get better, you've tried, and unfortunately you have to have the discussion, you can't stay here because you're not delivering the value we need. If they're not motivated, you have to figure out what the motivation is. And motivation problems, again, come in two pieces. Motivation problem number one is something is wrong in their personal life. They've had an ugly breakup, they're having an ugly divorce, their parent is sick, their kid is sick, whatever. Those things you can usually wait out, because if you had an employee that was performing and now they have a personal problem, you can give them some reasonable amount of time to adjust to it because they'll probably return to previous good performance. The other type of underperformance is I no longer like this job. People burn out on stuff. They get bored, they get upset, they don't. You can see if you can make a change that will lead them to higher energy, or you can sometimes though there's no change that's going to satisfy them in that job, and then they just have to get the heck out. So the bottom line here is you have to figure out why they're underperforming, see if you can help them through it, whether that's skill or motivation. And if you can, great, problem solved. And if you can't, then very few people want to sit in a job and suck at it, and you can't afford that. You are a steward of the company, but also, as I said to Kristen earlier about her 15 people, if you're going to have 15 people, you have to be fair to the other 14. How many of you, see, I can't see your hands in chat, but some of you can answer back. How many of you have ever worked on a team with someone who's not pulling their weight? Have you ever worked on a team with someone who's not pulling their weight? How did you feel about that?
Well, I felt like I deserved more because I was taking on more of the responsibility, and it was frustrating.
Right. So in that case, you wanted more because you were doing more. But also other people, and that's a totally fair response, other people can also feel like, why should I bother, right? Like, hands up. Yeah, everybody here. Furoki says, for the first point, what about someone who gets depression, feels shitty, to have to cut them off, but they might not be good until months later? Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second, Furo. When you've got the struggling person, the peers are like, why should I work hard? Why should I bother? Like, this person's getting away with doing nothing. Why should I work? And so your whole team collapses. Because you either have people who are working harder and picking up the slack and they feel screwed because they're not getting paid anymore. Or you have people who work down to the level of the lowest performer. Either way, unfortunately, you have to move people on. Look, I'm not a mental health expert. In the end, as a manager, most companies can't afford to carry someone forever. And so I can't give you a number of days, but if someone can't do the job, eventually we're not currently a socialist country, and they have to go take care of that themselves. And I'm not trying to be mean to anybody. You help them as much as you can. I will give you an example. Amazon gets a lot of bad rap for being a mean place and hard on employees. I know of a case where an employee had cancer, and he had a bad cancer, and it went on for months and then years. And HR actually was advocating, like, we have to put this person on leave. We've got to put them on long-term disability. They can't do their job. It's been a year. It's been 18 months. And the employee called in and said to his boss, it wasn't me, my medication costs $100,000 a month. What are you going to do? And so bottom line is, and this is a very sad story in this way, we kept him on our payroll like he was working until he passed away. And unfortunately, he did eventually die. And that was the right thing to do. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, make the best decision you can. If someone's truly sick, I think you're a human and you help them out. If someone kind of needs a kick in the butt and some reality and it's not going to kill them, I think they got to get on with their lives. And sometimes, like, you're not a doctor. If someone's depressed, it maybe they need a change and just can't express it. And I don't know. I'm not a doctor either. But eventually you have to be a steward of the company. That situation I described is horrible. So, all right. You people are killing it with questions. Let's go on to another one. Bottom line, you fire people who aren't going to be able to do the job after you try and help them. How do you identify employees who could become good managers? So this is actually the advice I gave you, right? Why? Why do they want to be a manager? It's two things. Kristen has a lot of interest in social skills and in relating to people. Management is ultimately about managing work and managing people. And you get the work done by having motivated, good people. So, thing one is, does the person have some side of human soft skills? And thing number two is, do they want to do it for the right reasons? If they want it for money, for power, to give orders, to be the boss, those are relatively bad reasons. If they care about people and they can be humble and want to serve people, and yet they can make hard decisions, those are great reasons to consider someone for a manager. Someone who's organized is also good. Someone who, not like you, someone who has domain expertise can be valuable. It's not required, but can be valuable. Those are my big reasons. So that's, I identify people who could be good managers by those who are motivated. They also have to be good performers. You're never going to take someone, like the case that someone's a crappy performer at their job, but they're somehow going to be a brilliant manager. You know, you want someone who's already good at what they're doing. 40 Pink Dragon says someone who's already seen as a leader among their peers, an advocate for their team. That's excellent advice. Most people don't become managers without being leaders of some sort first.
I mean, that's kind of what you talked about in our last stream, our last coaching session, when someone asked how you felt about someone like me taking initiative like I was with, my impact map and how I wanted to change things. And so that kind of ties in with, I'm interested enough in making some of those changes and in helping lead the team without it being necessarily my responsibility. And so I would hope that would come through as a quality that people would look for.
Yeah, you look for people who are taking on extra tasks, who are stepping up in some way. So you're looking for, and that's what you look for in a good employee, but you look for someone who's stepping up, who's trying to lead, who's trying to make a positive change, who's making suggestions. Let's see. Chat says, I feel like the best managers I've seen are people who started as developers and have their influence in tons of parts of the process. Maybe that may be the best managers you've seen, Furokey, because I know you're technical. And then Pink Dragon said it better. It is people who step up. All right, the good questions keep rolling. We'll do at least one more here because we have another one with 5 votes. For any of you who haven't asked questions, feel free. We're also getting long in the broadcast, so we'll only take a few more because we have dinner waiting. And so Awesome Dave's wife has made us dinner upstairs, and we have more wine waiting, which is very important to us, which brings us to another point. What's that point going to be since we mentioned wine?
Eric,
hit the whiskey, buddy. And we're going to know. You don't think we're going to know, but we're going to know. All right. Eric, take a drink. What do we got here? So the next question is, how can you tell when the expectations of the boss are realistic or unrealistic? Oh, boy. I said earlier in this broadcast, I like hard questions. Thank you. That's a hard one. What do you think about that?
So I had a request recently that I thought was unrealistic in a sense, and it was frustrating because I was going to be tasked to try to get something up and running that I didn't agree with because I didn't think that it was the right, like the decision should have been made earlier on, and that wasn't our fault, and I felt like that was a miss from other people, and so why are we now having to try to throw this together? But what I did was I just asked a lot of questions. I just kept asking questions to figure out like if I was on the right track with my opinion or not. And what I started to I started understanding the implications, like tried to get more of that bigger picture.
Yeah, big picture's good.
Yeah, and that helped me kind of, just get a better pulse, I guess, on it and gauge how realistic, which told me how much I should or shouldn't push back. So I gave in because I felt like some of the points were valid. I still didn't necessarily love or agree with the path we had to take, but I was able to align, and therefore I knew where to push and where not to push, and we've been pretty successful in catching up and getting where we need to be, which has been great.
And that's really, honestly, thank you, Kristen. That's an excellent answer, which is ask questions. How can you tell when the expectations of the boss are realistic or unrealistic? First, let's talk reality. Bosses are paid to get the most work done as possible within some broad definition of reason. And bad bosses exceed that. But remember, the manager's job is to streamline the work and try to get the most results. Like, that's what they're paid for. They're paid to help the team accomplish as much as possible. And there's a quote I like, which is, reasonable men conform to their environment. Therefore, all progress is due to unreasonable men. Most of the stuff we love was created by unreasonable people. Steve Jobs, maker of the iPhone, maker of Apple TV, the Mac, all the other stuff, famously unrealistic and unreasonable. Elon Musk, here's a guy who's trying to build electric cars and space rockets and hyperloops and God knows what else all at the same time. And the list goes on and on. Very few inventors have ever been called realistic. They're always called dreamers and fools and whatever. Now, that doesn't mean that every unrealistic idea is a good one. Mm-hmm. So how you tell them apart, you have to ask questions. Look at the boss's prior track record. This is the best answer. Mm-hmm. If the boss has burnt out and screwed over 3 teams before you, and had a list of failed projects, probably this one's headed down the same path. If, on the other hand, the boss has generally been a reasonable person, generally been a good leader, and generally has a happy team and has delivered a lot of success, then maybe it's you who doesn't yet understand, and so ask them for help. Most bosses appreciate the question, this goal seems really hard. I'm not sure we can do it. Tell me what you're thinking. Finally, it's also true that sometimes I, as a boss, will go to my team and say, look, and then this appears to be what happened with you at some level. We screwed up. We missed something. I need a hero. I need someone who can put in a weekend and get us over the hump. And I can't necessarily promise you a raise, but whoever's the hero, I will remember. And I ask people for heroism all the time. The thing is, people like to be heroes. They like to say in their self-image, I did it. So I give them that chance. Now that... No.
I mean, I get that. I think people also like to be respected and given a circumstance that they can be successful in.
Of course.
And so a lot of times the asks that come in that I think are unrealistic, it's the question to me is it sustainable? Can we continue to be the hero, right? So I guess if the hero is changing like from team to team, then maybe it's a little more sustainable. But I look for sustainability because if you don't, you might have that hero moment, but the team's going to end up hurting if you continue to ask them for those types of things.
Totally. You can't ask people to be heroes all the time. And as Pink Dragon says, shit does happen, and sometimes you just have to pull up your boots and do what needs to be done. Will Scarlett, I'm not going to go in depth and read out your question, but I actually changed my opinion on stream. By the end of that, or maybe I went back to Devin after it, I think pictures are good, and I've changed my mind on that. Devin was right, and I think he's got a good point there. So, these are great questions, folks. Thanks for nailing it. Let's see. How do you know when you are failing as a manager? Are there any early signs? Oh, yes. The number one sign is people will leave. Mm-hmm. They will transfer out of your team if your company allows transfers and has open roles, and otherwise they'll quit. So Research shows that 70% of people who leave a team leave the team for their direct manager. Now, they don't always say that. They don't look you in the eyes and say, Ethan, I'm quitting because I don't like you. Or Ethan, I'm quitting because you're unreasonable. Instead, they say, oh, my husband got a better job. Or I really need a break to be with my kids. Or honestly, I got an offer with better comp. But it turns out if you call them up 2 years later and ask them, why did you actually leave? 70% will say they left because of their manager. So if you have people leaving, now look, sometimes people leave. And by the way, not everyone is a match for every manager. But if you have a bunch of people leave, it's you and you're the problem. That's the number one sign. Think about, though, this is not a hard question to answer in this sense. If you've ever had a manager who's struggling, I don't know if you have, Kristen, if you ever had a tough manager, what were the signs that they were struggling?
Not understanding in conversation, not being able to reiterate what you're saying or understand why you're asking things, or not being able to explain why to answer the questions you need in order to motivate your team, which is a huge miss. It's really hard to get people on board if you don't really understand the why and you're just asking them to give it their all for, who knows what reason.
Yep. If you can't connect with people, that's a sign. When you're failing as a manager, another sign is that you're getting frustrated or angry at your team a lot. I will be the first to say sometimes people piss me off, and I think that's everyone. Like human interaction, it doesn't have to be someone I'm managing, but managers, if you're frustrated with your team a lot, that's like you're probably the problem. Like remember, your team usually, most of the people are trying to do a good job. And so, yes, if there's one particular employee who's failing and you're irritated, that might be the other case of an employee who's struggling. But if generally you're like, my team doesn't get it, my team this, my team that, and you're generalizing, you're failing. And if you haven't read about this, you can go to the book that people were talking about in chat, Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. It was great. And they swapped the leaders, and the awful team got great, and the good team didn't fail, but got much worse. And so, yeah, the boat. That's right, Pashi. So, read that, and you'll understand. So the big sign, though, is people leaving. That's like people vote with their feet. And they also vote with their effort. If you as a manager ask for a volunteer for be a hero, and you get crickets, that's another sign.
Or like back channel talk. I mean, you'll hear stuff. So there's always that.
Yep.
And I think someone said about not being able to provide direction when you're too scared. So and this may not be what you meant, but I've seen like some yes men managers, and they'll say yes, and they'll be ready to back you if you're upset about something, but they also say yes to everything else that's asked of them that then impacts their team. And so having that has been, I would say, is a sign. Like, just if you're looking at your manager and your manager is yes men, then there is potential for that to happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If no one ever tells you no, or challenges you, you're probably failing as a manager. If you don't have trust with your team to where they're comfortable giving you hard messages, you're probably struggling. Great teams and great managers welcome bad news. And if you as a manager can't welcome bad news, remember, if someone brings you bad news and you're like, "Rawr!" They'll never bring you bad news again. They'll hide it, they'll lie about it, they'll blame other people, they'll say nothing and hope you don't discover it. If you're not getting bad news for your team, it's another sign. All right. Let's see. We have a couple more good questions here, and then we're going to cut it off just so we can go eat. Do you think that people with substandard technical skills can find their way into management? Is there too much stickiness for higher level roles? I'm not totally sure what this question means. certainly people with substandard technical skills do get into management roles. Is there too much stickiness for higher level roles?
I'm not sure what they mean by stickiness. I have substandard.
If you're there in
skills.
chat,
That's if we're
clarify.
going that way. I mean, I'm not a technical expert. I will get in and understand whatever I need to understand to help problem solve with my team, and I learn a lot all the time from a technical standpoint. But I'm not the person that's probably going to have the answer out the gate unless it's something I've experienced recently. But I think being a good manager requires you knowing how to, facilitate problem solving with your team. So you might not necessarily know all the technical pieces and parts, but
the most important thing about managing is being a leader. If you don't have a certain skill, it can be a technical skill, it can be marketing skill, it can be sales skill, finance skill. Like, I'm not good at finance. It's knowing your gaps and supplementing them and not claiming to know things you do not. I meant stickiness in the sense of stickiness at the ends. I think the most important thing is knowing what you do and don't know and supplementing with experts. Now, if you truly know nothing about the domain, it's going to be very hard. I wouldn't want to get on an airplane built by someone who knew nothing about airplanes, aerodynamics, process, or safety, who was like, no, I'm an artist and it's a really pretty paint job and that'll make the plane fly. That would terrify me. But if people know their gaps, you can't be an expert in everything you're managing. So it's about what you do have to do is be good at detecting bullshit, because employees will bullshit you not even meaning to. They don't want to tell you bad news, even if you have a good relationship. Nobody loves going to their boss and telling them bad news. And so they'll sugarcoat stuff. And you got to be good at teasing out, well, is that really true? Tell me more. So, all right.
I think we answered a different question.
Yeah.
Okay.
People who get into management find it easy to stay there. Yeah. At bad companies,
might come back to your motivation.
Yeah, what I'll say, I'll give you a tip, at least in Amazon. The higher you go in the food chain, the more likely you are to get fired, actually, statistically. And so we have the data that shows that, and we have thousands of managers. But I won't say that a lot of people, the thing is a bad manager damages dozens or hundreds or thousands of people. And there can be a hesitancy to remove people in management because it leaves such a big hole. Like this case where you have, what happened? I assume the previous manager left?
So the previous manager was on multiple teams, and then there was a split.
Yeah.
So that manager is still with certain teams, and that team is, because of the split between
doesn't have anyone
IT and
right
marketing.
now.
Yeah, it just couldn't get that filled in quick enough, and
but all right, cool. We'll do this last question, and then we're gonna call it a night, because it's been great to have Kristen here. We think we have Eric suitably drunk, but if not, we're gonna do it right now. So Eric, this is number 3, and we're counting. Plus, you should have been honoring your own rules of the drinking game. Yeah, and don't mess with Kristen because she has friends. That's the message here, Eric. What if you have the least experience among people applying for a supervisor position? Can I make up the difference in an interview? You should take this one.
Yeah. So back to what you were saying about being honest about what you do know or don't know, I think is a key piece, but also knowing what to go out for. So in my interview, I was, again, really clear asking questions around what are the expectations, because I know that I may not have as much experience in certain areas or, technical knowledge or whatever it is. So asking questions to help me determine if this is a good fit for me, it goes both ways in an interview. And so I think it's really important to be clear and not just feel like you have to win the interview, but rather just knowing that there's certain things that I need to know. I won't be successful unless we can align on these things. So like going into the interview, I know what those things are so that I can be clear and understand what the expectation is on both ends.
So experience is not the only variable. Energy, education, yes, but that's a type of experience. These traits we talked about, have you stood out by volunteering, by delivering results? Are you a person who makes things happen? Are you decent with other humans, or does the team loathe you? Presuming that the team likes you reasonably well, they don't have to love you, but they can't hate you. And presuming that you've delivered and that you have reasonable social skills and that you have helped the boss out, absolutely, it's not the most experience. You can make up the difference in an interview. And remember, this goes back to that book, Rejection Proof. The other side of Rejection Proof, the Jia Jiang book, talks about if you don't ask, you won't get it. So you should ask. If you make a big ask, there's a chance you'll get it. Very few people, in America anyway, ever died by asking. Make the big ask and see what happens.
I mean, on paper, like so I already was committed to applying for this role before the official job description came out. And when it came out, I was like, oh shit. Like, if I would have just read that, I would have never applied for it. But because I already had relationships built and I understood what the expectation and the need was, and I could see how I have in my current role been able to augment and do some of those things, like I was able to understand it better. If it would have been at a new company, I would have been really, really
hesitant.
I don't think that I would have, but because of the understanding I have of the current situation and the environment, I knew like I can do this. I can pull this through. I'm going to be capable of, delivering on these expectations.
Sweet. All right. XX Lassie, I appreciate your positive support. On this question, another angle, what if you're applying as an external person? Yeah, as an external person, look, take a shot at it. Again, what do you have to lose? Like, you don't have the job, so you get rejected. Like, you still don't have the job. You didn't have it in the first place. But more than that, if you're applying as an external person, I've done a bunch of shows about how to interview well and set yourself up to interview. But experience is not the only factor. If you do you have past proof? Can you talk about your accomplishments in a way that shows that you're humble, but that you've done things of value? Can you talk about leadership? So, how long until you apply again in the same company? Totally depends on the company, but again, keep asking. 6 months, 3 months, I don't know. Are they different roles? It's not like they can penalize you for asking. Yeah, and a newbie in here puts in about we've talked about this a bunch here. Women feel like they have to check all the boxes on the criteria and men don't. And it's one of the factors that differentiates why men and women rise at different levels in companies. Let's see. We had one other question get votes. It's really long. I'm reading here, folks.
So I had this experience.
So let me read it out if we're going to answer it. We'll do this last question. We swear it's last. Tell us about a time someone on your team wasn't performing the way they should. How did you motivate them, or how did you handle the situation? How would you like to receive feedback? Go ahead.
So I had a developer who was kind of tasked with putting out the fires, and this fire just was not being put out. It was taking forever, and I was trying to figure out how to support him and what he needed, and just like having conversation with him, I realized what he really needed was just someone to talk it out with. It didn't have to be another technical expert. So that person ended up being me, and in conversation and asking him questions, he solved it, and it was amazing, and it was incredible, and it I think it took a website loading. We were having issues. It took 18 seconds to milliseconds, so which is a huge change and what we really needed for our performance. And And so I think that kind of like he wasn't taking up that charge the way that other people wanted him to. Like they were looking at him as a tech lead, a dev lead, and they expected him to operate. He didn't have what he needed to do that. And so instead of looking at it and saying, well, the problem's not getting solved, I was looking at it and saying, what does he need? What's lacking in order to help him solve the problem? And it was as simple as being able to sit there and brainstorm and work with him. And so that's an example where it turned out good, right? And he was able to solve it. But on the onset, it looked like someone who just didn't want to take up their responsibility as a tech lead.
So I've had tons of situations where someone wasn't performing. I always investigate. I'm trying to figure out why. And a lot of that's asking. And then motivating them is either removing what's blocking them or setting the standard. So sometimes you just have to tell people that what they've done unfortunately doesn't meet the standard. And there what you're trying to do is separate the work that you've performed is not at our standard. Many managers make that sound like you are a bad person. And what you're trying to say is the work is not at our standard. You're a wonderful person. I'm sure you're a decent human. You're a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a great charitable worker, whatever. It's not about you. It is about the work and the quality we expect. And let's discuss how I can help you get to where you're delivering the work we require. And then for motivation, depends on what motivates the person. Are they there for money? Are they there to get the job done and go home to their family? Are they there because they want to excel? You find what's important to them and you show them a way to get that thing. Most people mainly want to feel, we talked about this before. Someone called out to me, in games, we design games, right? Twitch is a game place around autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So purpose is I want to know why I'm doing it. Autonomy is I want to have some freedom in how I do it. I don't want you micromanaging me too much. And mastery is I'm improving in my skills. People want those three things. If you show people the way to have that, like why do you need to do it? Here's different ways you can do it. I'm not telling you how. And how do I get better at it? Yeah, Rex says that's from the book Drive by Daniel Pink. It probably is. So anyway, that's enough questions for tonight. Couple of announcements. Let me make them real quick. First, Kristen, wonderful to have you here live.
This is awesome.
We're up for dinner now, so I'm going to get to know her better. Join our Discord if you haven't. We put all kinds of things in Discord, including the instructions are in general chat right now in Discord. If you want to come on our live show tomorrow, I'm going to be on Devin Nash's channel, which is just Devin Nash. So twitch.tv/Devin Nash. I'll be there at about 11 a.m. He and I are going to do live interviews. So if you want interview practice, either come on the show through Discord or come watch. And we're going to do a battle royale of interview candidates. We'll be nice. I hear we terrify people.
You have a gong when someone's like not doing well.
Yeah, maybe. No, we'll make it fun though. What we don't have is a gun. So, it's not that battle royale. And we're going to do that 11 a.m. tomorrow. My next show will be Wednesday the 13th at 6 p.m. We're going to talk about how to grow as an IC. So this has been a fabulous show. Chat has been awesome. I love all the questions you ask. And we will host the stream through the Easy Coach. We'll turn on hosting tomorrow. And we'll have that live whenever Devin and I go live. But meanwhile, my next stream's the 13th at 6 o'clock, and we'll talk about how to grow as an individual contributor. You don't have to go into management. You can make a ton of money and have a lot of life satisfaction. Management is not the only way.
That's important for managers to know, too.
Correct.
Because I want to know how to help my team grow and feel like they're making progress without necessarily having to say, like, well, you have to move into the thing that
you have to do what I do.
Yeah.
That's a great call out, Kristen. Very smart. Managers have a bad habit of assuming that because management was the right path for me, it's the right path for you, and projecting it onto their people. And most people will not ever be managers. It's not what they want to do. A lot will, because with age, people leave being ICs, but most won't.
But if you're here watching this stream because you want to be a manager, you should probably watch that next one so that you
To
can
help other
manage
people
who don't.
That is, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
You've had 2 great calls for action. That's really good. So, Kristen makes a great co-host for this show. So with that said, we're going to go have dinner. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate the audience. Does my resume need to be scrubbed with personal info for tomorrow? Yes. We may not display it, Duke of Thought, but just take your name and address off the top. Otherwise, we may not display it. We just need it to be able to ask you questions relevant to what you do. We're going to have fun with the questions tomorrow. We're going to ask a lot of the classic questions of interviews, like where do you want to be in 5 years? I'm sure that one will come out. We're going to ask the classic tropes. So we're going to have fun with it. Devin and I always have a blast. So we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 6. With that, cheers, we're out.
Cheers.